I ran into it.
Ask that same question.
Good morning, everyone. Can I have everyone take their seats, please? And if you have a BlackBerry or electronic device, please tune it to vibrate or silence. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Members of the public are advised that other individuals and the media may also be audibly and or visually recording this meeting. So, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
The only changes that we have are a number of items of correspondence in the yellow package with respect to item 6.4, which is 3075 Tisdale Road.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of December the 3rd, 2013 as presented? Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pasuta, all those in favor? Carried. We have a delegation request from Burton respecting public transit for the MLE officers. Before we begin, I'm going to ask Mr. Hazel if he would speak to the delegation request before we consider its approval for a future meeting. Mr. Hazel, good morning.
Good morning. So, Madam Chair, first of all, we do have some active enforcement requests associated with this gentleman's property, and he has sent some emails to the Secretary, so we're not exactly sure what the nature of his entire request is. In terms of him mentioning about bylaw officers riding buses, in many cases it's not practical because they're all over the city, they carry a lot of equipment, but we do actually have many of our contract Corps of Commissioners who ride the buses, so they ride to the BIAs, they do their job all day and they come back. So I would suggest that we might want to contact the delegate and take it offline and then if necessary bring it back to the committee.
Okay, so your recommendation is for the staff to deal with this gentleman for now, and if he still has to request to come forward later, then so be it. Okay, what is the committee's decision? Oh, clerk.
So it would just be that this delegation be referred to staff if that's how you wish to proceed.
Okay, Councillor Pearson, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor for moving this delegation to staff and for further information? Carried, thank you. Consent items are in front of you. 5.1, the Hamilton Historical Board minutes from October 15th and November the 19th, both of 2013. May I have a motion to approve 5.1? Councillor Collins, Councillor Farr, all those in favor? Thank you. 5.2, request to include 1 Jones Street, Stoney Creek in the Register of Property of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest under the Ontario Heritage Act in Ward 9. Move it, Councillor Pearson, who's on that board, and seconded by Councillor Pasuta. All those in favor? Thank you. 5.3, divesting of city-owned properties in Pleasant View, Dundas, Ward 13. May I have a motion to approve this item 5.3, please? Councillor Partridge, Councillor Farr, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Farr. Just a second. There's the big red one.
Just to Joanne, I had a look at this report, the divesting of city-owned properties in Pleasant View, and there's 2 on the map, right?
Through Mr. Chair, there's actually 4. There are 3 up in the northern portion north of York Road. They're very, very tiny. Oh. And then there's 1 south directly adjacent to the RBG lands.
Good.
Councillor Farr.
We approve this here today. It's ratified at council next Wednesday. And then I'm just wondering on the timing because I have an interest in looking at a swap. We'll leave it at that as it relates to a downtown property and an interest from that owner to roughly that area and behind the RBG. I have an opportunity prior to this divestiture, of which I support, to sit with staff and the property owner in downtown Hamilton and staff prior to it heading out to the open market. Through you, Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair. What is happening with that specific property? It is the one near the RBG. It's part of a larger program that the city is dealing with the RBG in terms of the different land pieces and some swaps there. The group that was dealing with it was in our real estate division, Bill Farkas's group. So you might want to talk to them because it's all part of a larger plan, so I can't specifically speak to that individual property. And that's one of the reasons we want it off the list is because all these properties are part of other initiatives.
And other interests? Okay.
Councillor Farr.
Okay, you know what, I'll talk to real estate and take it offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Partridge, can you take the chair? I just have a question through you
Yep,
to
certainly.
Staff. The ward councillor, Councillor Powers, is he in agreement with this? I haven't seen anything for or against.
Madam Chair, what happened with this property, there was a recommendation originally back a few years ago to deal with that. He's not that concerned with it because the lands, all of them are landlocked, and the two authorities would be either Conservation Halton or the RBG taking them over. They can't be developed anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Councillor Partridge.
All right, thank you.
So I need a motion, please, to approve 5.3. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Ferguson, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Prohibition. Prohibited. Yeah, we have boa constrictors. May I have a motion to receive item 5.4? Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Collins. Councillor Pearson has a question.
Through you to Mr. Hazelden. Is this is going to affect the review we're doing currently? Is it not on the facility on Barton and Gage?
Marty?
Through Madam Chair, it would, but as I understand it, there are none of these types of snakes in that facility right now.
I'm sorry, Marty, can you speak up? I didn't hear that either.
Through Madam Chair, it would affect the facility that we're enforcing right now, but as I understand it, there are none of these types of snakes that are in that facility, so it will not.
It will not affect them.
Okay, so I'm sorry, just need to clarify. There are none now because they currently meet our bylaw because they had them all removed, but were there in the past?
Marty?
Through Madam Chair, as of Monday of this week, the facility was still not in compliance. We are
Okay.
working with the operators, trying to gain compliance, but they are still not in compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor
Thank you.
Pearson? Okay, so can I have a motion to receive item .4, please? Councillor Farr, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Public hearings and delegations. Before you, we have 6.1. This is an application for an amendment to the City of Hamilton zoning bylaw number 6593 for lands located at 981 to 985 King Street West in Ward 1. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council approves the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Are there any members of the public wishing to address this committee on this item today? Are there any members of the public? Are there any members of the public willing to address this item? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please, to close the public meeting? Councillor Pasuta, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor? Thank you. So now, before you, I just have a motion to receive the staff, or to waive the staff presentation, or do you want to hear the public or the staff? Geez, got to have this coffee. Councillor Pearson. You're moving that we waive the staff presentation. Do I have a seconder to waive the staff presentation? Councillor Farr, all those in favor? Thank you. So then now, Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you. Just through you, Madam Chair, to staff. Do we have any comments from the ward councillor on this particular file? Go ahead, Tim.
Hello, through you to the chair. There has been no comments from the councillor, from Councillor McHattie.
No comments?
No comments.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll
thank
assume
you.
he's in support.
Councillor Pearson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll move the recommendation of approval. And I know this is just adding the additional use. I know this plaza. The only concern I would have had initially was the fact that it's very difficult parking area. This is where the Shoppers Drug Mart is in Westdale, and on the westerly side, the Shoppers Drug Mart. There's a couple little businesses. There's Wheels Bakery, well-known bakery in Westdale, and then there's a parking lot, and then the libraries to the east of it. So I know there are at times congestion with regards to parking, but I know in the report I read and reconfirmed today that, you know, it is a walkable neighborhood, and that was that's what their targeting is residents walking to this facility, et cetera. So I will move the recommendation in support of it.
Thank you, and Councillor Collins is seconding that. So on the on the motion to approve the recommendation by staff, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Now, members of committee, the next 3 items are in Ward 11, so I'm going to have a seat while my friend here, Councillor Partridge, the first vice chair, is going to take over the meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So the next item is 6.2, which is the application to amend the Township of Glanbrook zoning bylaw for the lands located at 1660 Hall Road. Members of the public, excuse me, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council approves the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Are there any members of the public wishing to address this committee on this item? Are there any members of the public wishing to address the committee on these items? And one more time, are there any members of the public wishing to address the committee on these items? I'm seeing no one at this present time. So may I have a motion to close the public meeting, please? Councillor Johnson, Councillor Pearson, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And may I have a motion to waive the staff presentation? Councillor Johnson, Councillor Ferguson, all in favor? Carried. And may I have a motion to approve the recommendations? Councillor Johnson, please.
Yes, and I will move the recommendation for the staff, and I just wanted to thank Mr. Barlow, who's with us here today, just to give people some idea that this actual property was in the family's name back in the day, and it's coming back into the family's envelope now. They even have a crown deed on this land from years ago. So congratulations to the Barlow family for a successful and wonderful agricultural business that they're operating. So Mr. Barlow, thank you very much, and I move this motion to consolidate these farms.
And a seconder? Councillor Collins, all in favor? That is carried. Now, all right, so now we're going to do the public one? All right. Okay, so members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, this is on 6.3, which is the application to amend the Urban Hamilton Official Plan zoning bylaw and for approval of a draft plan of subdivision known as Fairgrounds West for lands located at 3450 Glanbrook Road. So members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or a public body does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council approves the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So I will ask this 3 times. Are there any members of the public wishing to address this committee? Are there any members of the public wishing to address this committee on this item? Any members of the public wishing to address this item to the committee? I'm seeing none. So may I have a motion to close the public meeting? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Pasuta, all in favor, please. And a motion to waive the staff presentation. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Farr. So before we do that, before we waive the presentation, Councillor Johnson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a question through you to Steve Robichaud, who's been carrying the conversation between the applicant and our office. It's our understanding that the applicant is, where are you, Steve? Sorry, Steve. The applicant is agreeable to allowing the public meeting to happen today, but we are actually deferring the decision-making until after the flood report comes on February the 4th. So we're looking at a 20-day period, correct, Steve?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that is correct. The applicant has requested that the public meeting be held, but they would be agreeable to deferring making a decision on the application until the February 4th Planning Committee meeting, provided that this matter does return on the February 4th Planning Committee.
Perfect, thank you. And just to let everyone know, back in 2012, September 2012, we deferred another application, which is actually butting this one, and because of the flooding issues that we had. I want to thank Mr. Lasani, believe it or not, because he gave me a very comprehensive investigative report that he did on the village of Glanbrook to tell where all the hot spots were. So because of this report, and I blamed him. I said, it's because of you. We had to put this on hold. So we got all the things happening. So we had the smokestack testing or smoke testing done. We had the manhole covers replaced. The system was all cleaned out. And so anyways, on February the 4th, we're hoping anyways, because I see Sally Young Lee up there probably just shaking. We're going to have it ready there by February the 4th. So these two applications now can come forward. I can step in front of the community and say, we've taken care of it. We're ready to go again. So thank you to Mr. Lasani and the group for agreeing to this. So we'll see them back here on the 4th for the decision. So I'd like to table this till the 4th, please, the remainder of the...
We still have to close the public presentation, and then I'll come back to you for that motion.
Perfect.
Okay? So may I have a motion to waive the staff presentation? It was Councillor Johnson, Councillor Farr, all in favor. Carried, thank you. And now I'll come back to you, Councillor Johnson, for a motion to defer.
Yep, deferred, please, to February the 4th as a result of the flood report coming as well. Thank you.
So now the situation is, I've already called for the public presentation and no one stood up. So we've already passed that. And James, you wanted to say something? Okay. All right, just one moment, please. So Councillor Farr, Councillor Collins, all in favor, please? Carried. That's carried. Okay, go ahead. Come on down. Okay, welcome, James.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. A brief submission. You're on a roll this morning. We don't intend to take much of your time.
Okay, if you would just state your name and who you're representing, that would be great.
And my name is James Webb. I'm a professional land use planner speaking to you today on behalf of Lozani Homes.
And just pull the microphone right up there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that good? Can you hear me? Thank you.
A little bit louder. Right into it.
We do have a full PowerPoint presentation. We're going to put it up. I don't think that we need it. We also have paper copies that we're going to distribute. But our submission to you is brief. Let me at the outset say we have had an opportunity to work with your staff and the councillor, and we are appreciative of everyone's efforts to get us here today. Getting to a public meeting is always a significant milestone. It does require a huge amount of work and collaboration, so thanks to all involved. There is a staff report before you today recommending approval of the planning instruments. We've had a chance to review it. We find that it's full, it's comprehensive, and it achieves exactly what we need to implement this development proposal. In addition, there are a series of conditions of draft plan approval that will allow us to move to the next phase of the development. We intend to continue talking with staff to ensure that the conditions are appropriate, matters that we can implement and address as we proceed to development. As stated by the councillor,
James, sorry. Vanessa, could I ask you to please turn up the volume on that microphone? Okay, thank you. Try again, James.
how's that?
Better, much better.
As you heard, there is a request for a deferral of the matter, and we are in agreement. The intent is that the decisions on these planning applications happen in tandem with committee's consideration of the staff report dealing with, and I'll probably get this wrong, but it is the BSSSP, the Glanbrook Storm and Sanitary Sewer System Performance Report. As the councillor has identified, this is a matter that's been on the books for a significant period of time. Initially, a matter that resulted in deferrals of other applications back in April of 2013. We understand that the report is done. It's meetings today. It'll be ready for submission at that meeting of the 4th. This project has been able to proceed to today's decision point in parallel with that report. Through our work with development engineering staff, abundance of caution approach, best practices. We actually have added an additional stormwater management facility that's intended to complement the existing system, but that's been done to ensure that essentially belt, garters, and suspenders approach to stormwater management will be fully and completely implemented. We've also agreed, in addition to that pond, to a condition of draft plan approval wherein there's full agreement that any and all pertinent recommendations that flow from that report will be implemented. Condition number 38 says we will implement any and all recommendations. We'll work with staff to ensure that we're not implementing recommendations that perhaps aren't directly germane to this project, but it's a show of good faith by the developer to ensure that this project does in fact implement everything that is being recommended by your consultants. In light of the above, Madam Chairman, as I said, we're in full agreement to the deferral. Our only request, somewhat of a procedural matter, we will submit the paperwork through the committee chair, but we would respectfully request the opportunity to come back to that meeting when our planning applications are here for a decision, should we wish to delegate any matters to committee that may have arisen at that point. So we'll put the paperwork in motion now to preserve that right to speak at the meeting. We don't foresee any issues of that. We've had a conversation on the issue and I see it nodding, so that'll be fine. So in closing, Madam Chair, we're in agreement. We think that the matter before you today is ready to go, but we're fully prepared to cooperate with all and come back to you at that next possible meeting. So that concludes my presentation. We'd be pleased to answer any questions. We'd be pleased to take you through the full and complete presentation if you wish. You can see what's being built, but
Thank you, James. I appreciate that. So you are in agreement with the deferral, and you will be discussing it with staff. Are there any questions for Mr. Webb at this point? Seeing none. A motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Pasuta, Councillor Johnson, all in favor? That is carried. Okay, thank you. Now I'll come back to you, Councillor Johnson.
I move that we defer the 6.3 to the February the 4th meeting in conjunction with the flood report.
All right, and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor, please. That is carried. All right, thank you, everyone. We're just moving right along. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Now we're moving on to item 6.4, which is the application for the amendment to Glanbrook zoning bylaw number 464 to permit a place of worship for lands located at 3075 Tisdale Road in Glanbrook, and it is a Glanbrook day today. So, members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make written submission to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council approves the zoning bylaw amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So, 3 times. Are there any members of the public wishing to address the committee at this time? Are there any members of the public wanting to address the committee at this time? And last time, are there any members of the public wishing to address the committee at this time? I'm seeing none. So, I have a motion to close the public meeting. Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Pearson, all in favor? And motion to waive the presentation. Councillor Johnson, and you have a question, so before we do that, go ahead, please.
This, if you know, the last time that we had this before us, the staff was actually denying the application, and now they are approving this application. For the record, I'm going to ask staff to explain the difference and why we have an approval in front of us.
All right. Who would like to address that? The councillor.
Through the chair. First off, I just want to indicate the correction to recommendation B. The file number should be ZAR-13-008. Secondly, I just realized when I saw the package of extra submissions that a submission was received from Mr. Cartwright on January 10th. I thought it went to the clerks, but it was sent to our fax number. It was addressed to the coordinator. So I do have an extra piece of correspondence. Do you have that?
And is that I don't have it, but you can just give it to me and we'll add it as council correspondence.
It was addressed to you, but I just realized that the fax was to our planning fax, so I do have extra correspondence from Mr. Cartwright.
All right, Vanessa?
There's additional correspondence to this item that did not make the deadline for this agenda, so it goes as council's correspondence, and it's received formally there, so we can just add that to it as well.
All right, so we're not dealing with it at this committee level. It'll go directly to council with the report at that time. All right, thank you. And to answer the councillor's question, please.
Yes, through the chair, an initial staff report in December, there are a number of outstanding items that we were concerned with, primarily the choice of location. And in that, the applicants did submit a list of properties that they had pursued over the last number of years, probably since 2009 or 10, showing the properties that they did look at locating this church. The majority of them were in prime agricultural areas. There were quite a few in the Glanbrook urban area as well. All of them proved to be not appropriate, or they weren't available. And so we were satisfied that they had undertaken an exhaustive research for an appropriate parcel of land. And given that this land was not prime agricultural land, it's a rural designation, so lower quality soils, we were satisfied now that they had undertaken and proved to us that they did conform with the search and criteria of the rural official plan.
All right, thank you, councillor.
Thank you. And Mr. Cartwright's letter of concern, I'm assuming it was a letter of concern? Peter?
Go ahead,
Yes,
Peter.
correct. Sorry, and he has a number of points that he's listed in terms of his actually 10 valid reasons where he feels it should be denied as per our original staff report.
As per the original, but it's not pertaining to the amended staff report, Peter?
I'm not sure when he made this submission whether he had reviewed the new staff report yet. I did speak with him this morning, and he, after reading the report further, I guess he was a little, wasn't sure of some of the comments, and then after reading it further, he said he understood, but I'm not sure if his objections are still valid. I'm sure they are. That he still has concerns.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. And I'll, at the appropriate time, I'll move to approve the application. And I see Councillor Pearson would like to ask them. We should probably ask them the same ones. Thank you.
Okay, and next is Councillor Whitehead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just ask, because I need to clearly understand, is there a place of worship, is there a difference between the urban official plan and how we deal with places of worship versus the rural? If there is a difference, what that difference is?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there is a significant difference. Even in the rural area, we would encourage the congregation or the church group to first look at properties in the urban area to locate their church. Failing that, the next place would be a settlement area. And in this case, I mean, Glanbrook is an urban area. And then the closest settlement areas would be, Woodburn, in terms of the Glanbrook area. And where in the congregation, the area that they're trying to serve is basically rural Glanbrook and into Caledonia. Now, the test is you have to prove that the majority of your congregation is from the rural area. They have done that. So that's the significant test difference, is that the majority of your congregation are rural residents.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Councillor?
Okay, and in the urban, my understanding is they can take any house anywhere in any neighborhood and declare it as a place of worship, and we can do nothing about it. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as it relates to the City of Hamilton, under the zoning bylaw 6593, a place of worship is an unrestricted use, so you are correct. Under the current zoning within the City of Hamilton, any property can be used for a place of worship as of right, subject to, and I don't even believe there's any parking requirements in 6593 as they relate to places of worship, so it's much more flexible from a zoning perspective. The official plans do treat them differently than the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so I just wanted to draw the contrast. So I certainly appreciate what's before us today. We do need to talk about the urban side because to convert a single-family home in the middle of a neighborhood that doesn't have the room into a place of worship is very disruptive to the neighborhood.
And thank you, Councillor, but this is strictly in the rural area, so I do appreciate your comments, and you can take them offline. All right, so I'll come back to Councillor Pearson. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Peter, because I'm sorry we don't have the copy of that letter in front of Mr. Cartwright, is it? Could I just ask where he is in location on the map here to the proposal?
Through the chair, Mr. Cartwright owns the property to the north where the barn is located. So it's he is at 3065 Tisdale. It actually wraps around
Oh, okay.
the hatched and the shaded area you see there.
Yep, see it. So the hatched and gray area, he's the white property all around that.
That's
Thank you.
correct.
I just wanted to get the context of where he was. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearson. Now I'll come back to Councillor Johnson now to move the motion.
Yeah, I move the motion that we approve the 6.4 in its entirety.
All right, and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor, please. And that's carried. Okay, thank you. Good job. All right, we're done with Glanbrook, so I will now turn it back over to you. Oh, thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that. So may I have a motion to receive the correspondence, please? Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Pearson, all in favor? And that's carried. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Partridge. We are now at 8.1, the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Report, 13007. Are there any discussions on this report? Then may I have a motion? Sorry? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Ferguson, all those in favor? Carried. 8.2 Municipal Heritage Report, 13. We got a fine, but we got Councillor Farr would like to speak to it.
Through your chair to Alyssa Golden, who's up there now. Just a question on F, Part 3, which is the recommendation to designate 1284 Main Street East, my old alma mater, Delta Secondary School. Certainly I've had a few folks in the community interested in following this, and actually a very quick question through you with respect to the timeline. What we have before us now from the good people, councillors and citizens and staff that are revolving around these monthly Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee meetings. Recommendation that the solicitor be directed to take appropriate action to designate 1284 Main, otherwise known as DSS. And I'm just interested in a timeline through you, Madam Chair, to Alyssa.
Through you, Madam Chair. So there was a staff report presented to Municipal Heritage Committee at their meeting on December 19th with staff's recommendation to designate, and there was a presentation by the consultants who prepared the Cultural Heritage Assessment. The consultation with the Municipal Heritage Committee will then be turned into a new staff report that will be going to Planning Committee, and there will be a formal discussion and presentation by the consultants at the February 18th Planning Committee meeting.
Thanks very much. That's it.
Okay, so can I have a motion, please, to approve 8.2? Councillor Pearson, Councillor Farr, all those in favor? Thank you. 8.3, Site Plan Control Bylaw number, as amended, bylaw 08-298. This is citywide. Right. Councillor Ferguson.
Just a question. This has created some unease in the rural areas because we're going to move to, and I've talked to Heather offline about this, moving to site plan approval anywhere you're within a natural heritage area. And I think in Councillor Pursuita's ward, that's about 90% of his ward. I know in Ancaster it's not as big, but there's still a significant area. Johnson's area is big. Got a nice little card mailed to my home that we're having public meetings on the on the zoning bylaw that's being prepared as part of the new official plan. So why is this in here today before we go through those public?
Through you, Madam Chairman, the rural zoning bylaw and the site plan control bylaw are two separate processes, but they are complementary. So we are going to be presenting information on the revisions to the site plan bylaw for the information of the rural community at our zoning meetings to make them aware of the changes. But they are two separate bylaws, so they're dealt with in separate processes.
Okay. I have trouble understanding this. The public's got to really have trouble understanding it. Looks like we're sneaking something through on them. I'm really uncomfortable with this whole process. Heather, just for the benefit for the public record, could you just explain again if they're in a natural heritage area, which is quite extensive on the mapping that has been produced for this. So a good number of farms, entire farms in a natural heritage area, which means they need a site plan approval, which means you've got to hire experts to do this if they want to build an implement shed for to get it inside, or put an expansion on a barn, or put up a silo. The fees for rural areas are half of what they are for the urban areas. Have I got that right?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that is correct. The fee for site plan control for an agricultural use is half of whatever the normally required full fee would be. So a full site plan application for new development, essentially new development on an undisturbed site, would be, the full fee is approximately $8,000, so that would be reduced to $4,000 for an agricultural use. On a site that's already disturbed, they're just putting up an additional barn or shed in proximity to the existing farm cluster. We could reduce that to consider it an amendment to an approved site plan. The fee for that is approximately $2,000, so it would be reduced to $1,000 for agricultural uses. And if it's a very, very small addition or small shed, it would be considered a minor application. And the full fee is $1,000, so it would be reduced to $500. So we're doing our best to reduce the fees and recognize that in cases where we can charge half of a reduced fee, we will.
Okay. And
further to that, there are cases too. Basically, what this bylaw does is it gives us the authority to require site plan control in these cases where agricultural buildings are being constructed within or adjacent to a core area or a natural feature. If our planners look at the proposed development and determine that the likelihood of any impact on the feature is very slim, it's already a disturbed area, then we have the right to exempt that application, and we will do that wherever possible. The site plan control application is only taken if we have concerns about the impact on a feature, and our planners feel the need to review that.
Councillor Ferguson.
okay, I'm just worried. Sometimes you're putting in the hands of a staff person. Then if you happen to get a grumpy staff person, he's never going to.
We don't have grumpy staff.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And so in a sense, I'm feeling very uncomfortable with this. There's no zoning, there's no site plan that's ever been required for rural areas, so you're never going to have a situation where there's an existing site plan and it's a small addition to it because there's never been site plans done for rural buildings before. Could you just publicly answer for me, through you, Madam Chairman, to Heather or Steve, what's the problem we're trying to solve by doing this?
Heather?
Well, the reason or the rationale for why we're requiring site plan is we're implementing policies in the rural official plan which determine what types of studies may be required for development adjacent to one of these natural features to protect the features. They're called core areas in our official plan. There's potential for the need for an environmental impact statement depending how close you are or if you're within one of these features. So the site plan is a process that allows us to require an environmental impact statement if necessary, or just to review the proposed development in relation to the feature to determine how we can best protect that feature.
If the committee decides we don't want to do this, agriculture is very important to our economy. Generally, in the agricultural world, markets change. There's not a great deal of profit levels in the farming community. Because in addition to,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, so I don't know if it's just me or.
Can you hear me okay, Heather?
Is it It's hard to, right? Yeah.
And
Sorry.
so
There we go.
if we just decide, no, we don't want to do this, does the mover of that motion go to jail, or what's the consequences?
Let's find out.
I'm going to have Robert move it.
Steve?
Through you, Madam Chairman, the rural official plan as adopted and approved by the Ontario Municipal Board provides for the direction to do this. There's a general provision in the Planning Act that says all decisions of a municipal council must be in conformity with the rural official plan. So I don't believe that there's a, quote unquote, official plan police out there that are ready to arrest you and throw you in jail for moving in contravention of the official plan. But there is that Planning Act provision that says you are required to do this. This is actually a modification of the current site plan control bylaw, which says that within the rural area, site plan control will apply for its greenhouses, intensive agricultural operations, and the language is a little bit confusing as it relates to development in and around environmentally sensitive areas. As an alternative to doing this, the other option would have been to prohibit through the zoning bylaw any development or redevelopment of those properties that contain an environmentally sensitive area or within that buffer area. So this allows staff to look at the property, make the determination if they are not within the ESA or within the buffer associated with that environmental feature, and they were just, they're rebuilding a barn or they're rebuilding a dwelling, deem it not to be development for the purposes of the site plan control bylaw, and then they proceed on with their building permit. And in the majority of the cases, that's the direction we try to provide. It would only be in that case where somebody was actually building closer to an ESA or within that ESA feature, which is currently permitted under the zoning bylaw. So that's what we are trying to achieve. We're trying to avoid that situation.
That sounds great in theory. But the reality is, and I think the people who represent the rural areas have been uncomfortable even through the official plan process. I know Joanne and I have had some spirited conversations about this, where you've mass painted areas, all ESA. And as I say, in the case of Councillor Pasuta, it's probably 90% of his ward. And so it just worries me that we're doing this for bureaucratic reasons, not for practical reasons. Farmers are not going to build an implement shed in a low spot or a barn because they don't want their barn flooded. And farming is a very important part of our community. And so I'm tempted just to do nothing on this thing, just turn it down. And this, because it's not clear to me what the consequences are of that yet. Okay, we won't go to jail, but will somebody drag us before the OMB? Maybe. And if they do, we can deal with it at that time. What are the consequences if we just do nothing?
Steve, what are the consequences if we do nothing?
We would have sort of, the current situation is not very clear in terms of the policy direction under the current site plan control bylaw. It does say that on properties containing an environmentally sensitive area, they are subject to site plan control. It's just the language is not clear as it relates to agricultural related uses. It's very clear in terms of non-agricultural related uses in the rural area would be subject to the site plan control bylaw. And these amendments are intended just to provide a bit of clarity around that. We did consult with the Rural and Ag Affairs Committee earlier this year, and they did not, or last year, and they didn't express any concerns or objections to us proceeding with the amendments to the site plan control bylaw. So we did try to engage them and have those discussions. And as I indicated, we are implementing the direction in the rural official plan as approved by the Ontario Municipal Board to move forward with dealing with this. Property owners are already subject to these regulations because they have to go to the Conservation Authority and get approvals, and we're just trying to coordinate that with property owners using the site plan process so they're not going to the Conservation Authority and then finding out that they can't do what they want to do because they need additional approvals, whether it's from a zoning point of view or a site plan approval. So it does provide a bit of an organizing framework and clarity for landowners. And as I indicated, that the majority of the cases where they're developing within the existing farm building complex, we deem it not to be development for the purposes of the site plan control bylaw, and they proceed to the building permit, and we don't have to deal with the application.
Okay, but if it's not clear what we have to do, let's make it clear and just say it's not required. I don't want bureaucracy to get in the way of good common sense. And because it's in the official plan is why we got to do this. No, let's not do it because I've never heard an example of a problem that needs to be solved other than a bureaucratic problem. And, and with due respect, I was at that meeting of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, and as I said in my opening comments, I have trouble getting my head around this stuff. They don't understand it. And because there's three languages in this country, English, French, and planning. And it takes a long while to get your head around this stuff and understand that. holy crap, you want to put another silo up because you want to add 20 more heads to your livestock? You got to pay $4,000 for a site plan approval and probably $20,000 for a consultant to draw it all up. And so why are we doing this? Because farmers will not build things in wet areas. They can't because they'll never get access to it. They'll get stuck. It's that simple. So I'll hear what my other colleagues think about this thing, but I'm tempted just to say, no, let's not do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on my list is Councillor Pasuta. I didn't know we had dual language, so we're good. We're bilingual. No. Go ahead, Councillor Pasuta.
Thank you, Madam Chair Johnson. So I'm heading on the same path as Lloyd is here, Councillor Ferguson, but Lloyd sitting beside me here. What's the timeline on having this put through? Madam Chair?
Sure. If this is approved at committee today, it would go to council next week for ratification.
So for the process, it goes to council next week, but then it doesn't get ratified again until, is it the 20th of February, when it comes for the bylaw? Well, next week we approve this, and then it goes as a bylaw for the following council meeting, right, for approval on the 20th?
No, in this case, assuming it from planning committee to council, and then a council next Wednesday night, the bylaw would be presented to council for adoption. That would be in terms of the timeline for processing. If you're asking me, is there an urgency to proceeding with this matter today? The answer is no. If we want to defer this or you want to table this, it doesn't have to go today. There's nothing out there that says we have to enact this bylaw today or next week. And what we're saying is we're just moving forward with the implementation program under the rural official plan, and that's why it's being brought forward today.
Okay,
Councillor Pasuta.
I'll come back to that in a minute. I just got a few comments here, questions. So, reading between the lines down here, when we get to environmentally sensitive areas and lands and distances, when a farmer wants to tile drain his land, low land that has over the years washed in and grown up with brush and that, is that going to be an issue here too then? Tile drain your land and
Through you, Madam Chair, that would be considered a site alteration, so they may require a site alteration permit that's separate from site plan control. They also may need approvals from the Conservation Authority, depending where they're located. But that would not be deemed development for the purpose of the site plan control bylaw.
okay. I had an interesting conversation on Saturday evening with a conservation enforcement officer. We got talking about conservation and zoning and planning issues and that. I'm just throwing this out there, and I won't say who it was or what conservation authority. It was interesting that conservation officer indicated to me that you may pay taxes on your land, but you don't own your land. It's owned by the Crown. And the Conservation Ministry, Environment, and municipalities, governance has control over your land. It was an interesting comment. And I think I know, Lloyd knows where I'm going with this too, but I would prefer, we're having these PIC meetings coming up this week. I see issues in here and items in here that are related to the zoning. I'd prefer to defer this, wait until these PICs are done. We're going to be getting comments back on that, and I think they kind of blend in together. Also, Madam Chair, I think we need to bring this back, have one meeting where we sit down with the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee and talk about this. Give them a heads up, give this to them to look at, and we sit and we talk about one meeting specific to deal with this. Try to make them understand it. I think that's important. I'll leave it at that. So we're looking for more comments from my colleagues. And Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor Pasuta. Councillor Partridge, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff, you mentioned that that municipalities are allowed to do this. And I'm just wondering, are there any other municipalities that are charging these extra fees or have gone down this route? Through you to Heather.
I'm not aware of any of what the fees other municipalities are charging. Any municipalities that are in the Greenbelt Plan area, though, are subject to the same policies regarding natural environment. So they would be looking at ways to implement those policies as well.
All right, so we're not aware at this point if any other municipalities are. And I guess similar to the previous speakers, my concern is just the lack of public knowledge and understanding around this. And Heather, you and I spoke about this. We talked about doing a presentation at the upcoming PIC this week on Thursday night for the rural zoning. But have there been any public meetings held with the rural areas at all on this?
Madam Chairman, no, there have not.
Okay, and so that's what concerns me, is that we're going to put through potentially, we're going to vote on something that the very people that are affected by this, which is the farming community and the agricultural community, they've been doing things a certain way for many, many years, and we brought in some new zoning, brought in some new official plans, and so I think, they're catching on to that. But I agree with the previous statement. Farmers are not going to build buildings in an ESL area or ESA area without checking with the Conservation Authority. So that's kind of happening already. I'm very concerned about adding extra fees. And I use an example like, Meisner's Flea Market. It's open one day a week. And yet, if there was any additional building that she wanted to do there, she would be subject to an awful lot of fees, which when you're only open one day a week, can you really afford to do that? And there's lots of other examples. My preference would be to defer this until we have those public meetings and have an opportunity, even if we do 2 of them, out in the community to just explain this. And I agree that, the rural, the committee, that would be appropriate as well. So those are my comments. I'm just, I can appreciate that we're doing this to protect the lands, protect those areas. But on the other side of things, we have a farming community. It's worth $1.5 billion to our economy. $1.5 billion to our economy. It's huge. And I just don't want to put more shackles and barriers around our farmers to have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
The last time I heard common sense was Harris. We know how that went. So I think common sense could be used a little bit loosely. I understood that this was already a discussion that everyone's aware of and participated in. Well, let me finish. This is what I'm hearing from staff. This is part of the rural official plan. This is a process that embarked in consultations across the rural community and got approvals. What they're here before us here today is say that even though we have the policy and we had this consultation, we need more clarity on this certain issue. And all they're trying to do is bring house cleaning. So can I ask the question to the staff, is this housekeeping at this point in time?
Heather, is this housekeeping or is this what?
This is implementing policies of the official plan regarding the natural features.
So is it housekeeping?
Is it already, the framework's already built into the rural official plan, yes or no?
The requirement that studies and applications may be needed if you're developing in proximity to a core area is built into the official plan.
Can you say that again, please?
The requirement that additional studies may be needed if you're developing in proximity to a core area is in the official plan, and this is implementing those policies.
Thank you. So my point is that we created the framework, and if we had trouble with the framework, we had an opportunity to make those recommendations and suggestions before the official plan went off to the ministry. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did I not hear staff say that these are obligations already under the official plan, and that you were looking on this particular front for more clarity on the implementation? I'm trying to reiterate what I heard from staff, so help me understand. I think it was Mr. Robichaud that indicated that.
Heather or Steve?
That is correct. Under the rural official plan provides for a direction to provide for those environmentally sensitive areas. The current site plan control bylaw that predates the OMB approval of the rural official plan that says within the rural area on any property that adjacent to or contiguous to environmentally sensitive area is subject to site plan control. It's just the language and the clarity around the agricultural uses, which in the bylaw are exempt from site plan control, save and except for greenhouses and other intensive agricultural operations. So the attempt here in this amendment is to provide clarity in the language to say that those environmental protections apply to any property in the rural area, whether it's an agricultural or a non-agricultural use, and then we would take a look at it to determine whether, for the intent of the bylaw, whether it's a vacant site that's doesn't have any buildings on it, then it would be subject to site plan control. Where if it's an existing farm operation and they're not building closer to the ESA than the current buildings or structures, then the best practice is to deem it not to be development for the purposes of the site plan control bylaw and say that it does not apply, and they proceed straight to a building permit at that stage.
So the clear question is, if we abandon this altogether, and I hear the frustration, I just wanted to make sure that we understood there was a framework that was built around the consultations and the development of the rural plan that brought us here. We also need to understand what pre-existed the rural official plan that was passed that was very similar to what is being presented here, and they're looking for clarity is what staff is telling us. So to actually provide advantage to the farmers, not a disadvantage, but an advantage and an understanding and clarity to the process. And I agree with what I heard from my colleagues, that I don't want to be shackling the farmers in any way either, but I want to make things easier and clear and less cost to any changes the farmers make. And you can only do that with clarity. So can I ask, if we don't have this implemented, we have no site plan in regards to protections of environmental sensitive areas, then the alternative would be just what? To prohibit any development near ESAs?
Steve?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that would be one consideration in terms of developing. You couldn't amend the zoning bylaw that would say within those areas no development would be allowed. And that's what we were trying to avoid, that situation, or to have a very complicated zoning bylaw in terms of mapping all of those features and applying zoning regulations to them. So it was felt that using the site plan control would be an easier way from an implementation and administrative perspective in dealing with properties containing or contiguous to environmentally sensitive areas.
So,
Councillor Whitehead.
So, Madam Chair, if you listen to staff clearly, to me, this is more permissive by going this route than prohibitive, and that's what farmers want. But if it needs more clarity in regards to communicating those issues, I think that's a fair comment and criticism that's been raised around this table. But what I'm reading out of this is actually going to give greater opportunity, not less opportunity, when we're in those situations next to sensitive lands for farmers to be able, in fact, to make and put building permits in, as opposed to prohibiting that option. So I just want to make sure that was clear and that I was consistent with what I was hearing. But I do hear my colleagues' frustration and in regards to the communication and what it means, and it needs to be better communicated to those that are most impacted by it. I certainly support further consultation and education on what's before us, but I don't see it as a stick. I see it as basically a carrot in regards to facilitating developments that may be near sensitive lands.
Thank you. Councillor Partridge, can you take the chair before I refer back to you as the second speaker?
Absolutely.
I hear what everyone's saying, and I understand that there needs to be some clarity. What I have the concerns about is the fee structures and where did they come from. So Heather and I had a long talk, and it was basically about also the wineries. I know we want to tweeze out the ones that are doing some agricultural tourism businesses. Those, I understand tweezing those out. I understand getting that. But when we want to put a silo up or we want to put a barn up, trust me, the one person that's going to be the caretaker of the earth will be the farmer. So I understand where everybody is coming from, and I also understand that, yes, it was done through the rural official plan, but keep into consideration that both Councillor Partridge and I were not even here during that rural official plan process, so we don't know what kind of consultation was done. And I also get that we need to take it back to the Ag and Rural, and Joanne, I don't even have to look up at you. I know you're saying, but I did take it to the Ag and Rural. I understand that. But at the same time, as I've always said to the staff, when you're coming to the public and that third language that we heard about today, if it's in the more simpler facet, this is what it means, what do you think, A, B, and C. And I think that's what needs to be clarified. Mr. Barlow was here today to consolidate a farm. We've got a lot of good farms out where we are right now. They are all abutting onto ESAs, and trust me, a farmer will not put his barn in the middle of a core area. It's just not It's just not viable. They want to put it in usually within their cluster of farm buildings that they already have. But having said that, I had an issue a couple of months ago about a farmhouse that just wanted to move over a little bit, and believe it or not, it was going to be further away from the ESA, but it was still within that catchment area, and they were going to demand a site plan on it. So having said that, and trying to work through the process has been challenging at best, and it's frustrating for the staff. So I understand that. So I'm not willing to throw the whole thing out, the baby with the bathwater. I think there's some things we need to tweeze out of there, but at the same time to make it easier on both sides and not to make it more complicated and a bureaucratic mess. So I'm all for deferring this, further consultation. We do it all the time with the builders associations. Why can't we do it with the farmers? They're the biggest, in my opinion, they're the biggest manufacturing industry we have in this city, and we need to have a lot more consultation with them instead of less. So that's my comments for now, and I'm going to turn it back over to Councillor Partridge as the second-time speaker.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Yeah, and I'm all for deferring this until we have some public consultation. I understand that there were meetings held with the rural official plan, but it wasn't on this specific issue. And that document, that process is extremely complex. And for us to sit here and say, well, we did have consultation with our residents, we did go to the agriculture community during that whole process, so this shouldn't be an issue. And I just disagree with that. So I wanted to clarify that, again, because I asked the question, has there been any public consultation? And the answer from Heather was no, there hasn't been. So I'm not sure whether Councillor Pasuta wants to move that motion. I'll certainly second it, or I'll move the motion. You can come back to us. I know you're going back to Councillor Pasuta at the time, but to the motion to defer. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson, or Councillor Ferguson, please.
I just want to respond to some comments made by my colleague. I don't understand the new math where it's cheaper for farmers. You're adding $4,000 to do a site plan, plus the consulting costs, and those guys, they start a vehicle up, you can get $10,000, $20,000 pretty quick. That gets added onto the cost of putting up a new silo, building an implement shed or addition to their barn. So it's not cheaper. And secondly, we just do nothing. We're not saying that's going to stop anything happening in these ESA areas. We just do what we continue right now, because I heard Steve say, yeah, we could pass a bylaw prohibiting it, but they're not suggesting that yet, and nor would I support that if it came here. And I wish, sometimes just listen to the rural councillors, because we represent the farming community. I grew up on a farm. Robert runs a farm. We understand this business. And particularly Robert understands it very well. I still live in the rural area, so I understand it. And it just worries me when this misinformation comes out there. One other last question. Heather, do you happen to have that map that shows how massive that ESA area is in the rural areas in Hamilton? Do you have that so we could put it up on the screen with you today? The answer is no.
Can you put your mic on, please, Steve? Sorry, I must.
Through you, Madam Chairman. Heather has prepared a presentation on this, and it's included in that. Since we are going to be in the public dealing with the rural zoning tomorrow and Thursday, if the committee wishes, there's no reason why we just can't defer this matter, incorporate it into the rural zoning PICs, get the feedback, return to the Ag and Rural Affairs Advisory Committee on this matter, and then we can report back on a comprehensive basis with the rural zoning and this site plan amendment. As I indicated to Councillor Pasuta, there's not a sense of urgency of doing this. It was a housekeeping amendment that we wanted to bring forward. It was on the work program for implementation of the rural zoning bylaw, and if the committee would feel more comfortable that we had targeted consultation, we included this as part of that consultation process. Staff have no objection to proceeding on that basis.
Okay, and thanks, Heather, for putting that up. And I just wanted to point this out to you. The dark green is ESA areas. That's entire farms in a lot of cases. This is massive. This is going to have a big impact on our rural community, and we got to be careful. And I think, Madam Chairman, you made a good point that you and Councillor Partridge weren't even on council when the rural official plan was passed. When Councillor Pasuta and I came on council, I think it was the second meeting it was passed. We didn't know what the heck the stuff was and was buried in it, because it was done shortly after, very, very shortly after we came on council. But every time I see this map, particularly, as I said, in Councillor Pasuta's area, it's at least 50%, if not more, of the master is called ESA, but you drive through there, you can't see this. So we got to be very, very careful with it. So I'd be supportive. I'd like to just receive the presentation today and be done with it. But I don't think I got support for that. So I support a resolution just to take it back to Agri and Rural Affairs. And unfortunately, they're held in the evening. There's scheduling conflicts all the time trying to get out to those things. But I'd like to have an opportunity to speak to the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee so they understand this. And Heather's, she's very good at this too, explaining the consequences of it, just so we understand it. And so I'd support a deferral motion. Thank you.
And Heather and I talked about that very thing, about keeping it simple. And Councillor Clark, first-time speaker.
Heard our staff indicate that they were going to add it
For you, Madam Chairman, that would be correct. Notice the PICs which discuss the rural zoning, but we could incorporate this into the presentations, and if there was a sense that there was a need to have an additional targeted round of consultations dealing with this one specific element, we could incorporate that.
And the challenge is that advertisements are out. Colleagues here, it's going to explode when you slip it in after the fact. We're going to have a conversation on it itself, so people know what they're doing.
Thank you. Councillor Pasuta, then Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Chair Johnson. And Councillor Ferguson commented about us not being part of it. I was part of this process back before I was a councillor. And when did this all start? What year was it?
Which process are you talking about? The rural official plan or this process here?
The rural official plan.
Okay, rural official plan. When did the process start?
Through you, Madam Chair, this process started back in 2003, 2004, actually when the Greenbelt Plan came out. When the Greenbelt Plan came out, we had done a whole series of public meetings to discuss the Greenbelt and the implications. And that was the first step. And one of these issues, and some, Councillor Pasuta will remember, is that the city staff at the time struggled with the whole notion of this implementation. It has been in every report. Then we went through all the rural official plan public meetings at various stages up until it was adopted in September 2006.
Okay, Councillor Pasuta.
Okay, so
2003, 2004, the process started. It was adopted in 2006.
So, and Ag and Rural Affairs was part of it. I think Federation of Agriculture made a presentation to them. But when the mapping came out, the final mapping, and they're looking at it, there's been some concerns now. What can't we do? Like, we're included in all this green up here. There's concerns about that, as Councillor Ferguson has said. So that's what I'm hearing now. And then, of course, as we're going with the zoning, people are making comments on this too. What can and can't we do? So between the zoning and the site plan, it seems to be coming together. There's concerns here now with the agriculture group. I did hear, Madam Chair, I did hear Steve say, and the words would be tried to engage with the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee. And it's true. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if the meeting we had, Madam Chair, if the meeting we had was specifically to this one issue or if it was part of a meeting. This is what I'm driving at, that I think we need to get this to the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee weeks ahead of time and have a meeting scheduled only for that to have discussion. And try to get the farmers that are on that committee, staff, break this down, break the language down. I'm not saying farmers are dumb or anything, but break it down from the planning language to this is what's before you. So I think we need to go that route at this point in time. There was a comment made, Councillor Whitehead said it, and I try to read staff. Sometimes I can read staff. This time I did, when he said, this is more permissive than what's in place. Is this more permissive, what's before us? What we can and can't do in the agricultural world? Is more permissive than we can do right now to this day?
Through you, Madam Chairman, The zoning is the one that establishes the use. So in that sense, we're not changing any of the use permissions. What I was indicating was when we were looking at what would be the tools for implementing the official plan, the rural official plan as it relates to those environmentally sensitive areas, and looking at that continuum of options, one would be to zone all of those uses or those properties to exclude any sort of use on those properties. Or one option we looked at was to place those properties in a holding zone until they've done certain things, X, Y, or Z. Or was to look at using the site plan control bylaw as a mechanism for evaluating what was being proposed and making a determination if it was development or not development for the purposes of site plan control. So those we were trying, because there is a policy that stems from the Greenbelt in terms of providing protection for those environmentally sensitive areas, which was then flowed through the rural official plan, and now it's the implementation of the rural official plan policies. So by using the site plan control bylaw, it provides the maximum amount of flexibility for implementing provincial policy as it relates to the Greenbelt plan and the City of Hamilton's rural official plan.
That third language.
Yeah, okay. So, Madam Chair, so Steve, did you say this is more permissive and it doesn't cost us any more dollars on top of that? So is it more, I didn't read you, I'm sorry.
Can
So,
I clarify, cost us any more dollars? Are you talking as a farmer or as a city?
I'm not worried about the city.
Okay, thank you.
The farmer.
So is it costing the farmers more dollars?
If the farmer comes in for a building permit, or often we get two happens. One, the farmer will start with the Conservation Authority. They will get their permits from the Conservation Authority. Then they come in for a building permit, and building says, no, under the current site plan control bylaw, you need to go see planning to determine whether or not it's subject to site plan control. We will then look at it and say, if it's already an existing farm operation, they're not building any closer to the environmental features than the current buildings or structures, then we say it's not development for the purposes of site plan control. It would only be in the situation where it was a vacant property or if it's a non-farm situation and they're proposing to build either within an ESA or moving closer to the environmentally sensitive area, then the planning would say the site plan control bylaw would apply. At that time, the applicant would have two choices: proceed with their development plans or amend their plans in terms of where they want to build the structures so that we can eliminate the need to put them through a site plan process. And that is our first goal, is to eliminate the need to put them through a site plan process. We can work with the applicant to avoid the need for a site plan. That is the goal. But as I indicated, they are already coming to planning and saying this property has an environmental sensitive feature on it, and they're looking at they may or may not be subject to a site plan process. And all we're trying to do is clean up the language and remove the uncertainty as to whether or not the bylaw applies in their circumstances.
Councillor Pasuta.
Madam Chair, so through you to Steve then, so greenhouses have always had to have a site plan?
Current site plan control bylaw places greenhouses and other intensive similar operations like a mushroom farm. They're subject to site plan control.
Okay, for now, I don't know if Councillor Ferguson wants to tag team or not on this.
Councillor Whitehead first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's two issues here that I'm hearing clearly. I mean, I think one was identifying more cost to the farmers. So I need some clarification on that, because clearly that's not my position either. If we're proposing more cost, then that would be a concern for me. So help me with this. What is being suggested here would avoid cost or create more cost?
Steve or Heather?
Through you, Madam Chairman, if they are subject to site plan, then they would have to pay the applicable site plan fee. And as Heather indicated, under the site plan, under the City of Hamilton planning fees, any for agriculture-related applications pay half of the applicable fee. So currently, if there is a vacant property and it has an environmental sensitive area on it, and a farmer is proposing to build buildings or structures on it, they would be subject to site plan control, but they would pay half of the fee of an urban counterpart. So that if they were already buildings or structures on the site, then we would take a look at where they're proposing to develop new buildings or structures and make a determination whether or not they would have to go through site plan. And if they do, then that's when they would have to pay the fee. But in most circumstances in the rural area containing an ESA property, they're probably subject to having to go through a site plan process anyway. So what I'm trying to say is we're not adding anything new here. This is already currently in effect in terms as it relates to these environmentally sensitive areas.
Okay, so I'm glad you clarified that. I'm looking at whether there's a bit of cost avoidance by implementing what you're suggesting here today, because you've already identified this would create a greater flexibility for farmers with this clarification. I think you pretty clearly identified, because the other two options would be more prohibitive versus the flexibility that this process would enable. The second piece is you indicated that they're already required to some degree in these site plans because of the ESAs anyway, and that there's already a cost implicated. So this is not like anything new. But I'm really looking at, with what's being suggested here today, I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought I was reading into it that there might be even cost avoidance for the farmer by implementing what you're suggesting here today.
Through you, Madam Chairman of the Board of Council, I think it is a best practice. The department tries to work with the applicants in the rural area to avoid the need to go through site plan control. I think what I'm hearing from Councillors Ferguson and Pursuta is that the rural community may not be fully aware of what's the current site plan control bylaw, what's in the rural Hamilton official plan, and these housekeeping changes that are being proposed. And if there's the department is never afraid of having further community engagement and consultation. And if there's a direction to do that, we are more than willing to undertake further community consultation and engagement on this one particular matter and then report back on the results of that.
I appreciate it. I think it's complex. There's no question about it. I'm looking at, my glass is always half full, so I'm looking at this half full. Obviously, people are closer to the issue in regards to rural, would see it differently because you'd be suspicious it might be new and so forth, which is understandable. So I think clearly the path that is being recommended by my colleagues is one that needs to take place. But I'm certainly comfortable with what's being presented here today.
Thank you. And Councillor Partridge, if you can take the chair one last time before we go to the deferral. I'll just give you for instance, we had a farmer who wanted to move a building away from the ESA area, but in fact was still within the catchment area of that ESA, the buffer zone. And there's wording in here that says they may or may not need a site plan. That's the frustrating part as well, is that when you're moving away from it, but even though the land's been disturbed, even though I'm hearing we shouldn't need a site plan, is not definitely they don't need one. And it was very frustrating for that farmer. It took probably about 9 months to get over all the hurdles to understand that he was actually pulling the building away from the ESA. And one last thing, the farmers want the ESAs to stay in place because it helps with the drainage on their farms, and they can actually utilize more of the land than the stuff that's covered under with water if they don't tend to them. So I'm glad we're going back to the deferral. I had an ETV meeting. I had 90 hardcore farmers out there, not the ag and rural folks, but not hardcore farmers that were out there telling everyone how frustrating it is to deal with us, to deal with the police. So it's good if you can get it down to the language that we all understand and find out from the farmers whether or not this is a good, bad, or ugly. So I'll take the chair back, Councillor Pursuta or Partridge, and Councillor Pursuta, I'm coming to you for deferral, or is Councillor Partridge doing the deferral? Or until what time, or do you want to put any stipulations on the deferral? I'm serious. I want to know because we can put this on the outstanding business list. Can I have your microphone, please?
As soon as we can get an Ag and Rural Affairs Committee meeting together, and I can look into that.
So will your deferral say until further public consultation then? And that can be left open-ended? Clerk?
Or do we want to refer this to the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee and then have it come back to planning? Okay, so refer it back to staff for further consultation then.
Ag and Rural, I believe, is part of that consultation, but not solely the consultation, correct? So,
consultation. I'm not sure. We'll have to talk to staff. So we'll just we should maybe have a meeting on this possibly. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to get a comment back from staff on this. Should we go to the broader public or? Madam Chair, please.
Steve or Heather? This is looking for some boundaries, some perimeters here.
Sorry, I was just thinking as to what would be the best path, and I've heard Councillor Clark's comments as well. So I think what we can refer it back for community information and consultation dealing with, we can tag on to the current PICs for the rural zoning. We can go to the Rural Advisory Committee, as well as we to ensure that people have specific opportunity to be advised what we're doing this. We can arrange to have a separate advertised PIC on proposed changes to the site plan control bylaw within the rural area that would enable us to cover all of the bases, and then we would report back. And I think the rural zoning. Sorry, and if all goes well, we hope to bring forward the rural zoning, the bylaw, with the as a result of the public consultation in May. So it may be appropriate to bring it forward as one comprehensive package at that point in time with the new draft rural zoning bylaw, and that'll give us February, March, and April to have that consultation, because I know with the Ag Committee sometimes it can be difficult to get meetings. So rather than trying to bring this or rush this back.
Okay, so Councillor Pursuit, I'm hearing that we can defer this until further public consultation to include, but not limited to, ag and rural separate PICs, correct?
Correct. Now, and up to my colleagues too, I don't know if we need a whole bunch of meetings, not just have one public meeting, get it out there and have it, let's say, Ancaster Fairgrounds or someplace like that.
Through Madam Chairman, yes. We could hold one dedicated information center on the proposed amendments to the site plan control bylaw outside of what we're currently doing on the rural zoning.
Okay. So
Councillor Pursuit?
Madam Chair, that would be good. I don't want, and it's up to my colleagues too, but I don't want to take up a whole lot of staff time. We've gone through some of this before the process. One, get it out there through our contacts and, right?
So I think we grabbed that with deferring this until further public consultation to include, not limited, but to include ag and rural and at least one PIC.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. And are you willing to second that too, Councillor Partridge, first? Okay, and then Councillor Partridge would like to speak to it.
Yeah, thank you. And I would agree with that. I believe the public consultation is important, and I don't want to kind of minimize that from where I'm coming from. That's my whole point, is how are we going to communicate this to not just the farming community, but to the rural as well. And through you, Chair, could I just ask Vanessa to read that motion back, please?
I was just writing an email to Steve to ask him to retwink it here. So that it be referred to staff for further consultation.
Public consultation.
Yep, consultation and community consultation with one dedicated information center / meeting, and then a PIC advertisement, and then it also go to agricultural and rural affairs subcommittee, and then it to come back to planning along with the draft rural zoning bylaw in May.
Councillor Partridge?
All right, I mean, I just wanted to make sure that we've got the public consultation in there, because what Councillor Johnson said was a good motion, I thought. So, but anyway, it sounds like you've got the components in there. I just want to make sure that we don't lose it. So, but yes, I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. The deferral's on. Anyone with motions? I'm seeing none. Notices of motion. Councillor Clark, you have a notice of motion in front of us right now. This is the yellow paper, folks, 10.1.
As I understand, our tree cutting bylaw came before us once more, the woodland conservation bylaw. Filing a notice of motion to have it actually go to GIC meeting. I'm not sure whether or not have it go to GIC, but I'll leave it to my colleagues.
Okay, so we've got a waiver of the rules, and we've got Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Partridge. All those in favor to waive the rules? Thank you. And the notice of motion the notice of motion, which is now a motion, is in front of you, 10.1. Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All those in favor? And Councillor Partridge, just a second, please, wants to speak to it.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just, I have a situation right now. I'm very pleased to see this come forward. But my question is around timing. Is this coming to the next GIC? It doesn't specify.
I'd have to leave that to the clerks. I understand the next GIC is a two-parter, and we're jammed rather significantly.
Right, so through you to clerks, what kind of timing are we looking at here?
This will have to get ratified at council, and then after that, it's whatever GIC would come next. However, Carolyn will have a better idea of if it's...
So just to clarify, it would be the next GIC once this has been ratified at council next week?
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, so it wouldn't be coming, I think there's a GIC tomorrow, so I don't think it would be coming.
Wouldn't be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. And through you, Chair, I mean, I just want to say that, I have a rather urgent situation right now in Waterdown with a 2-acre woodlot. It's on a ravine, and developers in there. Good. And the developers in there clearing trees. We've got, all the staff are involved, and I just wanted to make sure that this was going to be timely coming forward, and so if I'm hearing that it's going to be a February GIC, then I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark?
Just caution, I don't think anyone can guarantee that right now, so you may want to sit down with the clerks and see how you can expedite that. Okay?
Thank you, and thank you for turning the microphones up. It must be my age, folks, but I'm having a hard time listening. So all those in favor of the motion going to the GIC? Carried. Thank you. So we move on to general information and other business. I've got outstanding business list amendments. May I have a motion to amend the outstanding business list as follows? Item E, J, Q, and I don't want to move S yet. I just want to ask a question. So all those in favor of the new amendments on these dates? Councillor Clark, Councillor Farr, all those in favor? Thank you. And turning the chair over to Councillor Partridge, please.
Go ahead.
Through you to Councillor Partridge, 50 Road, and this is item S. This is direction that we gave staff because we have all these honking developments coming into that area, Winona Walmart being one. We have 300 homes coming into that very corner. And we asked staff to take a look at 50 Road for improvements, upgrading, urbanizing. And I just want to know, it says to be determined. And I really would like to know if we could have a date or approximate date on this so I have something to tell the community.
All right, who would like to tackle that?
Good morning, Gavin.
Gavin, go ahead,
Good
please.
morning. Through the chair. 50 Road, when we received direction, I don't recall the month, was it May?
I'm sorry?
When we received direction to look at 50 Road, I think it was in the spring last year or maybe summer. In any case, we've completed an analysis looking at 50 Road in terms of grade separation, because that was one of the bigger concerns in terms of how traffic growth is going to be occurring. There's rail traffic growth planned, and then a new development on the north side of the tracks at 50 Road that's going to have a Walmart and Costco. So we've pulled together all the traffic studies. We've looked at a warrant analysis as it relates to a grade separation potential at 50 Road. We've completed that report, and we expect to be coming to the February 18th Planning Committee with an information report.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, February the 18th, they're coming through with the report, and that's just until you get to just south of the tracks. My other concern is Barton and 50 Road as well. That's where a big, this will end up being a huge intersection for the community. So do you have any time frame on that area? I know Barton Street right now is going through an assessment, but I'd like to know when Barton and 50 is going to be a part of that.
Through the chair, the specific report that we're bringing back doesn't address that intersection. However, it could, because work's being done right now in terms of we're working with traffic on looking at the corridor itself in terms of where the demands are going to be and the timelines for upgrades, and that includes when we'll be looking at a Class EA for the 50 Road corridor and finishing off a Class EA work for Barton Street itself. So I wouldn't think we'd want to delay the February 18th information about the grade separation of 50 Road potential, but I think perhaps coming back with additional information about that, say that intersection and timing of planned work in the 50 Road corridor and Barton Street, we could do that shortly thereafter, because again we're looking at that stuff right now.
Councillor,
thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just to put you on notice, Gavin, and I thought that we were under the understanding that 50 Road all the way up the escarpment was going to be taken into consideration, given all the customers that will be coming down to the new development. 3,000 cars, they're coming from Smithville, Upper Stoney Creek, Glanbrook. 50 Road is going to have massive overload on cars. So that was the other issue, was 50 Road mountain access. So my understanding was it was to be from top to bottom. Having said that, I'm happy with this one coming back on February the 18th, but I really want to make sure we've captured the entire road and not just pieces of it. I think it has to be looked at holistically.
Gavin?
Through the chair, that's exactly what we're doing. We wanted to get a head start on looking at the rail corridor because that triggers what we need to start doing in terms of the whole corridor. So we wanted to report on that because we know there was a significant discussion about what that risk is in terms of safety and the level of service. So that'll roll into how we report back on the 50 Road corridor and future work on Barton Street.
So we'll, through you, Chair, we'll hear on February the 18th the rest of the plans for the rest of the road?
Through the chair, I would say on February 18th, we'll present the information on the grade separation and then report on the timing and how we're going to deliver another information report, or at least in terms of how we're proceeding with that corridor. So whether you require an information report or a verbal update on how we're proceeding, I guess we'll discuss that.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, Gavin, that was just to put you on notice because that's going to be the questions coming forward on the 18th to make sure that we've looked at that entire road holistically. Thank you, Councillor Partridge. I'll take the chair back.
Before you do that, add Councillor Clark, please.
Councillor Clark.
Get some clarification because I do not recall any discussion about the 50 Road escarpment crossing. That would be a significant undertaking, and I know for a fact I would not have supported that. So can I get clarification? Was that under consideration at all?
Through the chair, Councillor, I couldn't quite hear what you said there about what you'd support.
I heard Councillor Johnson indicate 50 Road going up the escarpment. When we talked about 50 Road down by the lake, I don't believe anything was mentioned about the 50 Road crossing because any upgrades to that would be a significant undertaking. And it's been discussed forever in the old town of Stoney Creek and shot down hugely because of the costs. I know for a fact I would not have supported that. So I'm just trying to clarify, does this actually consider upgrades to that escarpment crossing?
Through the chair, the question at hand when we discussed it back in 2013 was looking at the corridor in terms of what those needs are. The Councillor Johnson had identified the demand in traffic as it increases coming from places from the south and east and not just the Stoney Creek area and where we typically think of as Hamilton. So the understanding is that when we look at the 50 Road corridor, it's not so much that we're looking at a new crossing, escarpment crossing. It's more trying to understand what the road needs are through the corridor, and then we'll scope that into an environmental assessment. So it doesn't, at this point, we're just looking at what those needs might be in terms of traffic demand, not that we're considering reconstructing a road or anything at this point. It's just part of the discussion to make sure, as the councillor said, we're looking at things holistically.
Thank you.
I'm simply surprised that the corridor across the escarpment is even under consideration, considering it was not a part of the other motion.
Gavin?
Through the chair, I was just looking at item S, and it doesn't, you're correct, it doesn't specifically say the 50 Road escarpment crossing. I would say anecdotally and through discussions with the councillor at different times, and perhaps, and I don't recall exactly, I don't have the minutes in front of me from that day, but the 50 Road corridor, and again, in terms of how staff does its work and looking at if there's been identified issues for traffic at, say, the rail line at Barton Street, and the fact is traffic it's not just there, it's from those corridors to the southwest, east, and north, that if we then proceed at a staff level to start looking at future plans for the corridor, then we do look at it at top to bottom, and we scope it, and it may not include that end of it at the end of the day, but the fact is we would include it in the discussion. So we don't want to miss anything. We don't want to come back to committee and then and find out there's something else that we maybe should have looked at. But the fact is, at a staff level, we generally know how to proceed in that regard.
Madam Chair, the motion that was passed by this committee and by the council did not include an escarpment crossing. It did not go up there. There was no consideration of it. There was no debate of it. And if it is broadened because of anecdotal conversations. It was not broadened by an authority of this council. So I wouldn't want to see a report coming in here recommending tearing up 50 Road, the escarpment crossing, or anything along that line without this council actually having a discussion on it to give the authority to have that review. The review was supposed to be 50 Road Barton, 50 Road the grade change. That was what the entire debate was. It was not about the top end of 50 Road.
Through the chair, I believe you're correct. I don't have any issue with that. It's only in that when we were planning for future works on corridors, we would, at staff, sort of look beyond that because those pressures at the crossing and at Barton, shorter term issues are affected in a broader sense, and that's all. And so in terms of coming back, the only thing I think we'd be saying is that we'd be looking at those things in terms of a scoping document that might be a class environmental assessment for 50 Road itself, whether it includes an escarpment crossing. That I don't believe that's.
And the reason I'm raising it is that there are some significantly priced homes sitting right along the side of 50 Road. So if you're now talking because of anecdotal conversations about widening that road, that's going to cause a great deal of consternation for the residents up at the top of 50 Road. And we didn't give any of that approval. So I certainly don't want phone calls from those people. They've gone through this once before. We're supposed to be dealing with the impact at the bottom where all the commercial areas is happening. That's what we were supposed to be dealing with.
Thank you. Councillor Partridge, could you please take the chair for a second through you
Yes, I will.
Gavin? Would it be fair to say that, yes, up until Barton Street and 50 was where the motion was, but to exclude other intersections further down eventually, and that's what you're coming in on the 18th to give us some understanding of whether or not number 8 and 50 may also have to be included, just for the very sake that you can include one corridor and not include all the intersections in that one little space?
Through the chair, I think it's fair to say that staff, when we do our planning, whether it's directed from council or not, especially on road corridors, it's not so the site-specific issues might be right there, but you're correct. You need to sort of look beyond those corridors and look to the farther to the south, farther to the east, and make sure you're not missing something. Because again, we don't want to do any kind of work in a piecemeal fashion, and we just want to report back in a holistic way to say, yeah, we've considered this. We're not just shifting a problem. We're making sure looking at things appropriately. And like 50 Road, for example, south of Highway 8, based on travel demand that I'm aware of, isn't likely going to change. And
right.
For those reasons that the councillor just mentioned about the fact is it's a constrained corridor. It's a 2-lane road. Would it ever be widened? Not in terms of lane capacity, that's for sure. There's no need to.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Councillor Partridge. So
And
we've
add
got
Councillor Clark on, please.
Thank
to
you.
your list.
I'm just curious why we didn't do that then down on the Centennial Parkway with Walmart. There was no consideration of the impacts on Lake. There was no considerations for the impacts in all the outside communities. So don't, if you want to include something in a discussion and so that the staff come back with it, then it's this body that's approving it. It can't be snuck in through the back door because we pay the price on that.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve D, please, item S? Councillor Partridge, Councillor Pasuta, all those in favour? Thank you. May I have a motion to remove the following from the outstanding business list, item FF and item, I think it's I. I. Thank you. And I believe item I, this is to be incorporated with the harmonized bylaw, correct? Just to be clear, this is the storage, the recreation for storage.
Through you, Madam Chairman, that is correct. I'm sorry, there was a staff direction that when we brought forward the housekeeping amendment to the bylaw, Stoney Creek bylaw, that we consult with the ward councillors. But as part of the work program for the new residential zones, the zoning bylaw reform group will be looking at the RV regulations as they would relate citywide because this previous city initiative was only for amendments to the former City of Stoney Creek zoning bylaw.
Thank you.
So there would be discretion of committee whether they wish for us to continue as staff to proceed with that housekeeping amendment as it relates to the Stoney Creek zoning bylaw, or to defer the matter and bring it forward as part of the new residential zones on a comprehensive basis.
Thank you. Item C as well. So can I have a motion, please, to remove those all from the outstanding business list? Thank you. Councillor Partridge, Councillor Farr, all those in favour. Thank you. Members of the committee, do we wish to go into camera for 12.1? 12.1? This is a litigation matter. They're going to go get
The city solicitor, the assistant city solicitor who has carriage of this file, I believe, is in the staff waiting area.
I believe, Madam Chairman, it's your ward. What's your wish?
my wish right now, because I just finished talking to Canada Bread, and I think we've got, are we okay right now with Canada Bread? Okay. Talked to them this morning. You and I'll confer. Can we wait until council to finish this off then? Okay, thank you. So we'll wait until council. If this needs to come to council for decision making, then we'll take it to council. Okay, so do we want to go in camera then, please? Thank you. So Councillor Pearson, Councillor Partridge, all those in favor. So let's see. We're moving into closed camera to consider item 12.1, which is subject to section 239.2 E and F of the Municipal Act and section 8.1 E and F of the procedural bylaw, as the subject matter of these items pertains to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the city, and the receiving of advice that is the subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Members of the public, please take your personal belongings, as council chambers must be vacated for our closed session. Once committee has finished their closed session discussions, we will invite you to come back to the room.